We had a dream, and that dream has become a reality.
Defined dreams playing out at a new Center City location.
There's the future, and there it is, big and gleaming and on Tryon Street and ready for the Charlotte of today.
The journey to a state-of-the-art home came through years of purposeful baby steps.
It wasn't just all of a sudden, we're going to have an African-American culture center, Afro-American. It wasn't like that at all. This is a progression.
Before moving to the Wells Fargo Cultural Campus, African-American Arts in Charlotte survived in several smaller venues.
But we always knew that there was a reason, that there was a mission that we needed to carry out. It was just a matter of organizing that, polishing it up, and taking it out there.
A vision now attached to this former Charlotte mayor.
Naming the building for Harvey while he's still with us. I think we need to let people know what they mean to us while they can hear us. I think that's impactful.
But you know, the seed was planted of naming that building for him, and there was applause immediately. It was absolutely spontaneous.
I'm humbled, grateful, and honored.
Harvey Gantt isn't the only one in the spotlight, but some of America's best-known art pieces are also being applauded.
The Hewitt collection will now be able to come home at last.
An art collection including the works of a native son.
We're trying to reestablish that connection between Romare, Bearden, and the city of Charlotte, and I can't think of a better institution to help formalize that connection.
The birth of a new center offers an opportunity for more meaningful preservation.
It is a magnificent building. It's a magnificent building.
The signs are up. Curious crowds are making their way through this art showplace, and the masses are starting to marvel. Hello and welcome from the West Gallery of the Harvey B. Gantt Center for African American Arts and Culture. I'm Steve Crump. Getting into this building and the progress it represents has been a lengthy process that hasn't come easy or overnight. Years of baby steps paved the way for such an incredible payoff moment. Leading up to the grand opening of this new center, a series of community events unfolded to set a very historic stage. Founders of the center would call it going from town to gown. The opening night was a formal affair, bringing together many of those who took such an idea of this place and grew it from the smallest of surroundings, putting it right on Front Street. The public would also have its celebration. Everyday people and some of the city's best known faces helping to open the doors of this place, linking our community's past and preserving it for future generations. And of course, you cannot leave out the person who this wonderful place is named after, Harvey B. Gantt, trailblazer, bridge builder, and pioneer, often described as former Charlotte mayor. But for those who know him and the individuals who have measured the positive changes in our city, the making of the Gantt Center can clearly be seen as triumph on Tryon. Towering expansion, aggressively pushing the Carolinas' largest city forward, gleaming symbols of prosperity, loudly amplifying a region's success. Often the envy of many metropolitan areas, Charlotte's highly regarded reputation is solidly progressive. But yesterday's moments, tainted by society's legal separations, weren't always pleasant or pretty.
Certainly there was a voice of protest, and there was action coupled with that voice of protest.
I think it was unforeseen because no one could have known where those protest signs were going to take us and where that road was going to end.
The protests were absolutely important for people to wake up, so to speak, and to listen, and to interchange, and to dialogue. And all of that brought us to a place where we could begin to see ourselves as we really were. African American people incorporated into a whole city that had many problems and many issues.
Passionate actions of burning desire for equality and inclusion ignited highly charged moments of civil disobedience, shining a light on the glaring disparities of the 1960s. Like so many other places, the Carolinas' largest city was divided by race as well as class. Charlotte, also became a community where violent threats of domestic terrorism etched their painful scars.
Do you have any idea who it may be?
I have my beliefs. I don't want to incriminate anyone, but I'm quite sure it's either the Klan or people of the Klan mentality.
However, meaningful lessons gained from segregated lunch counters offered a telling blueprint during the 1970s, some 8 miles north of downtown at UNC Charlotte.
At that time, I was at UNCC, and this struggle was going on at UNCC in terms of our presence there.
There was a need for us to examine and bring about some kind of repository of learning, some repository for keeping the artifacts and information about Black history and culture. Thus evolved the idea for an Afro-American Cultural Center.
The cry was there for the artists and artisans, and indeed so. They wanted a place that they could call home. They wanted a place that could belong, in some sense, to them. They wanted a place where people could see their works, and people could experience their talents, and people could watch them dance and act and do visual arts.
It was on this university's campus more than 3 decades ago that Dr. Bertha Maxwell Roddy and Dr. Mary Harper emerged as the inventors and innovators of a curriculum focusing on African American studies.
When you start looking at what we were trying to create there, you would have to be looking at culture, academic excellence, and social responsibility.
We became aware of all of the artists in the area, the T.J. Reddies.
We took a more proactive stand and decided to be creative.
Charlotte artist T.J. Reddy recalls the idea of cultural recognition for students of color wasn't initially embraced.
When we presented our Constitution to the student legislature at the time, I'm telling you, there were like maybe 9 of the different members with their parliamentarians and everybody. They got up and walked out.
Eventually, university administrators gave in to the demands by embracing the often overlooked creativity of Black students, but the need for public expression and acceptance went well beyond campus. The concept came to life near the busy intersection of Moorhead and McDowell. Offices of the old Charlotte-Mecklenburg Youth Council served as the off-campus birthplace, and planning meetings would follow at gathering spots like the Excelsior nightclub. Uptown Spirit Square became the first downtown home.
I do now remember that the Afro Center went through through Spirit Square. I remember the discussions leading to making it independent of the Arts and Science Council.
After we had been given the space in Spirit Square, we would have activities there for children on the weekends.
And that didn't work out very well for them. They needed their own space.
I think it was 600 and some square feet. And then the thought was what we could do if we had more space. We could do so much more programming, children's activities, adult activities, meeting places.
We wanted this center ultimately to be something for the people, from the grassroots on up.
We were in debt. I'll just say it that way. We were in debt. We really had no funds when I came along to pay a salary for an executive director or pay Spirit Square for rent. We just did not have any of that, so we needed to get some programs out.
Actually, we knew at that time that we were going to have to find space because we were in a cubbyhole of a space at Spirit Square. There was no room for theater or dance or drama, and all we could do was to kind of promote things.
Resolving the issue of cramped space at Spirit Square became the priority of a new Charlotte mayor during his first term, a mayor by the name of Harvey Gantt.
Well, Harvey Gantt came to my office at the Observer one day and said, Rolf, I want you to do something. And I said, well, sure. And he said, we need to raise $500,000 for the Afro-American Cultural Center. I said, great. And he said, I want you to be the chair. And I said, okay. And he also said to me, there's a wonderful woman that will help you named Dee Dee Murphy.
Rolf obviously had a far reach in the majority community. Dee Dee had been very involved, in our community and very dedicated. And to be able to put those two people together, I think really makes the difference.
Certainly with Rolf's expertise in fundraising in the community, I thought, done deal. And I was pleased, and I got certainly a tutorial in fundraising and how to make things happen in a positive way and how to be successful and how to run a campaign.
The ambitious campaign was designed to save and restore the old Little Rock AME Zion Church that was in a state of decay and despair. It had been bought by the city in 1979. Refurbishing the ailing church and converting it into a new center emerged as a full-time passion. Beginning as a $500,000 goal, the ambitious task would later evolve into an $800,000 challenge.
At the time that we were working to save the building and do all those things, we had no money at the Afro-American Cultural Center. We really did not have the money to make it happen.
The evolution of making the new center happen became a groundbreaking commitment because saving the church was the largest fundraising task ever taken to support an African-American cause in the city of Charlotte.
That was part of the beauty of this campaign. It reached across the spectrum of the community so that everyone could feel a part of what was going on, from the small contributions to the large. We had an event called Super Sunday where churches were encouraged to take up contributions in their own church communities and then come back to McDonald's cafeteria and add the money to the pot. And that was very exciting because we had a small church, Logan Chapel's CME church, that had had a fire the year before and was recovering, but they took up a contribution from their congregation and contributed $100, which they could have used toward rebuilding, but they wanted to support this effort.
In August of 1984 at Johnson C. Smith University, the first part of the goal was achieved. When the counting was finished, contributions went past the $1.1 million mark, more than $300,000 beyond the original goal.
224,000 of these dollars out of the black community.
From such a celebrated event, 2 years' worth of work went into revitalizing this building that over time has turned into a Center City showplace. A quarter of a century later, the memories are attached to Charlotte's cultural psyche.
The thing that I think about most was the grand opening of the Afro-American Cultural Center. That was a day when dreams were realized, when prayers were answered.
It happened with the help of City Council. It happened with the help of the Historic Preservation Foundation and many other people. Lots of hands worked to make that happen, and it took every one of them.
Well, I think the Afro-American Cultural Center over the years has been a bedrock of cultural offerings that have been well received in the community.
In more than 30 years, the Afro-American Cultural Center has carved out its own creative niche. December's Jazzy Christmas Luncheon is a holiday mainstay. Upbeat concerts on 7th Street have been many a summer night staple. Kwanzaa celebrations, gallery exhibits, and productions in the Attic Theater have also offered a showcase for individual and collective talents. Activities and events staying the course of the center's mission to promote, present, and preserve.
If you like art, if you like music, whatever you like, the center can embrace it or has embraced it over the years and made it a part of what this community is all about.
They've had to think about the mission over and over and over again, and they've been given opportunities to rethink the mission over and over and keep coming back to the same historic mission.
We wanted something that not only would reach all members of the black community, but would also be a source of information for the larger community. Because even in the 70s, we could see Charlotte-Mecklenburg becoming even more diverse.
Upgraded surroundings at the new home at the corner of Stonewall and Tryon will not change the mission. Scale models are telling, but the actual streetscape offers compelling insights, showcasing how the concept of a Wells Fargo cultural campus will put the center in a different league.
Well, a cultural campus is an incredible amenity being added to the south end of Tryon Street, and a very intense grouping of buildings and of different assignments that go on in those buildings.
We're really excited about the Gantt Center, which is going to start creating the buzz for the arts, I think, in Charlotte.
That buzz is easy to feel just by driving or walking down South Tryon Street. Uptown's new headquarters for the Afro AM, as it's been called, is now named for Charlotte's former mayor. A Harvey B. Gantt Center for African American Arts and Culture takes up one corner, and it's the first complex to open, anchored to the new Duke Energy Towers. This Center City Arts Showcase isn't just home to the new center, but the campus also houses the Beckler Art Museum, the 1,200-seat night theater, and the new Mint Museum.
It works so well because it is a major office development with a roughly 1.3 million square feet of office, 2,200 parking spots below grade, and that will work somewhat opposite of the cultural assets that are there. And you're going to have the Beckler Museum with this unbelievable European Impressionistic art collection with 1,400 pieces.
Well, this was a long-term vision. So when you think about it, this whole effort to raise the dollars for the cultural facilities platform, the 5 organizations that are going to be affected, started over 2 years ago. So we were in it for the long term. And while the financial meltdown was not expected, there was great planning done at that level.
There's tremendous excitement, and certainly the Gantt Center being one of the 4 brand new cultural facilities in our Uptown area, again, provides wonderful opportunities locally, regionally, and nationally.
Many people have wondered about where Charlotte's soul is, where its spirit is, and I actually believe that so much of our spirit is embodied in these cultural institutions. They are the social capital connector. They are where we come together from different walks of life to experience a common art performance or a common exhibition that opens up all sorts of dialogues.
We shouldn't leave out the NASCAR museum either, because that's going to create buzz as well. And I firmly believe that those people attending, going there, are going to be eager to come over to ours.
Certainly we plan to, in every way that we can, collaborate with our local sister organizations, again, the Mint Museum, Beckler, certainly the Levine Center, the McCall Center, wherever those collaborations make good sense, we're going to do that. And I think out of those collaborations, we'll be able to encourage more of our local community to take full advantage of the cultural facilities.
And to be a part of the Uptown Cultural Center now, where the men and others facilities are going to be there, it's going to give it the kind of exposure that it might not have gotten had it been a standalone facility somewhere off and not on a cultural campus.
All the votes are in now, and Harvey Gantt has officially won. We heard it right here. Everything's in. We have the new mayor.
We won! He hasn't held elected office in more than 20 years, but Harvey Gantt remains one of Charlotte's most beloved and respected mayors.
I, Harvey B. Gantt. I, Harvey B. Gantt.
Claiming City Hall's top job in 1983, catapulted his political career onto a national stage, shattering thick glass ceilings and overcoming social and institutional barriers at the ballot box added to the list of groundbreaking firsts for Gantt.
Harvey Gantt stepped from the car, surrounded by reporters and photographers from all over the country.
With courage and class 2 decades earlier, Gantt was the first of his race to enter South Carolina's Clemson University. By trade, he is an architect, but many of those who know him see this man as an obvious builder of community.
Taking the Afro Center to the next level during the formative years largely depended on Gantt's expertise.
You know, I remember Harvey Gantt working so hard, you know, with trying to raise, you know, money, you know, to purchase that and to, you know, the things that he was doing. But we were just so up and elated over Harvey.
So it was no mistake during the design and building process of the Wells Fargo Cultural Campus that the decision was made to name the new facility the Harvey B. Gantt Center for African American Arts and Culture.
I expected Harvey to light up, and he didn't at first. He was surprised, but he was not at all sure that this was the right way to go. He didn't feel he deserved this, which is unbelievable to me. If anybody deserves such an honor, it's Harvey.
But there would have to be a conversation with his wife, Cindy.
I'm not a big believer in naming things after people who are living. But that's apparently a kind of an old-fashioned idea that's going away now. And largely because I don't think my life's work is over yet. And so we don't know where that will go and where that will take me.
Maybe not. But front page stories about the center and the rich accomplishments of the man it's being named after is following Harvey these days.
Harvey is an all shucks kind of guy, and he's authentic. That's why people like him. He is very real, and I think authentic is the word for him. I'm sure he was surprised and a little embarrassed at the idea.
That was about the best thing that we could do for Charlotte and for this building. Harvey has been an icon in this community, not only for the African Americans, but for the white population as well. He has been a consensus builder. He was a wonderful mayor. He is still working in the community and trying to bring groups together, and has just been a supporter constantly. We have not lost him, and we won't. And he's a wonderful man. I just think it was a brilliant idea to name it for him.
Nobody could argue with the importance that Harvey has played in the city, and to crossing that cultural line and being supportive of it also in very quiet ways.
He has played a major role in almost every good thing that's happened in the city. And he was a great mayor. And because of being an architect and an urban planner, he was able to help take us in the right direction when we first began the revitalization of the center city. And a different mayor with different skills probably wouldn't have taken us there.
Harvey is so well known and beloved in our community. We honored him with the Pride Award last year. But he has just done so much for Charlotte, aside from being the first African-American mayor. You know, Harvey is just a solid citizen who has given back to this community and is so well deserving of that honor.
Harvey would be the first to tell us, hey, it's not about me, and no one is saying it is about him. It's just that he is the ideal person to represent what's been achieved.
I was raised in Greensboro, and I was a boy when Harvey made his first run for Senate. And I really think that he changed social capital issues in our state forever.
How do you explain this to people? That the same companies that are laying the people off are experiencing record profits. Folks, we can do better than that, can't we?
And I think Harvey's name carries a great deal of weight and a great deal of history.
The absolutely perfect person, the perfect name. Harvey has meant a lot to this community, has been so instrumental in the success of what happened in Charlotte as mayor at a pivotal time in this city's history.
Most people know that. It took me a while to accept the gift that was being offered, to have my name on a building. But I've come to learn how to appreciate it and to see it for the benefits that it might offer, to be able to have the opportunity to take one or all of my 7 grandchildren and walk through the building, and for them to ask about the history and why my name's on it, and to tell them why, and to talk about where Charlotte has come from and where Charlotte is going.
Where Charlotte's going is perhaps a silver lining in naming the new center after Harvey B. Gantt. Consider this. Tryon Street between Moorhead and 10th takes up roughly a dozen blocks. It is the headquarters of Fortune 500 companies and the center of entertainment and festive nightlife. Borrowing a selling point from the city of Chicago, some perhaps see this stretch of Tryon between the McCall and Gantt centers as Charlotte's Magnificent Mile. But what's occurred at the corner of Stonewall may be viewed as a sense of triumph on Tryon.
In every way, the building expresses the advancement of African Americans in this community. When I came to Charlotte in 1965, there were no African American architects in Charlotte.
It took nearly $20 million of public and private financing, from concept to concrete. This standing symbol of the New South is 4 stories high and 43,000 square feet. Outside, the strips across the building are meant to carry out the biblical theme of Jacob's Ladder, resembling the old Meyer Street School in 2nd Ward, where students pose for pictures on the fire escape. Yes. Inside, 3 spacious galleries have been designed to house touring and permanent art collections. The task of design is being handled by 2 African-American architects, Philip Freelon of Durham and former Mecklenburg County Commissioner Darrell Williams, who spent his early years working for Gantt. Challenging this design team was limited space and having to fit the building in a very tight slot.
The site is probably not 50 feet, wide, deep, and it covers the whole block in one direction, but it's very narrow in the other direction.
It really was a process of blending this really strong idea and imagery of the building with actually making it work functionally inside. And so that's for architects, that's what we do.
It is a prestigious first for Charlotte, not just because the building is being named for an African American and the fact that the hands-on design comes from black architects, but the local contractor handling the heavy lifting is also a minority-owned company, R.J. Leeper Construction, the very same Ronald J. Leeper who served on city council when Harvey Gantt was mayor.
So I just think it's just a phenomenal building, a phenomenal experience, and we feel just blessed to have a chance to be a part of this continuing history and growth of the Afro-American Culture Center.
And to see Ron Leeper, who is, advanced into the world of construction and doing well, and other firms that are doing well. It's just a testament to the fortitude and the aggressiveness and the focus of people who are wanting to move up and are doing well. And to have all of them a part of this effort, I think, is just wonderful.
So I think it was a great opportunity, and he's my mentor. I look up to him, I always will, and it means a lot.
To me, it's part of the story, and it's part of the history. This is a cultural center, and as they begin to explore the culture of Charlotte and go about their mission, I think that this development of the project is part of that very interesting story, and it's part of history.
So the fact that we have 4 professionals you just named involved in building the center, all who happen to be African American, is a statement about how far the South has come, and really our country.
Opening the doors to this new symbol of progress is an exercise of reconnecting with the Queen City's meaningful past.
I think Charlotte, not only Charlotte, but many cities lost as part of urban renewal. And so what has been left behind are memories.
I grew up in the old Brooklyn community and lived there until I was 7 years old. Shotgun houses were very close to me. We knew that a lot of history had been lost.
And Brooklyn was just bulldozed away, and you could say, well, this certainly did improve the look, but it also eradicated a lot of history.
People always spoke, as if they felt they had been stripped from the community, they'd been stripped from the neighborhood, and they had been robbed of history and opportunities, and were given promises that, if you move out now, we'll bring you back.
The new center is in a part of town that was significant in urban renewal. the old, it's in the sort of the Second Ward area. And there was so much of Black life over there. And perhaps with the new center, its design, what have you, we can preserve a part of that history.
While neighborhoods like this that once formed the hub of Charlotte's inner city have been systematically plucked from the local landscape, memorable images are recreated and prominently placed at the doorstep of this new center. Interpretive flashbacks of old Brooklyn, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Ward are the creations of artist Juan Logan and a work outside of the center called The Beacon.
Well, I'm actually trying to capture the idea that we were everywhere throughout Charlotte. We were not just located on the west side of town. We were all over Charlotte. You know, we were Charlotte in many respects. And so this mapping, this head that I created, is sort of suggesting that that's where everything takes place, has taken place and will continue to take place. It is within our minds, our imaginations.
Viewing the past not only as a historic reference, but it also demonstrates the necessity of community relevance.
And certainly using the Gantt Center, you know, as the anchor for the old Brooklyn community, I think that there's an awful lot of excitement and promise that the new facility can provide.
And to continue to be able to have some of that history included now in a new cultural facility, I think is phenomenal. It's very important because we just don't have a lot of that history preserved unless it's through there for American Culture Center.
Historic preservation is one role applauded and carried out, but now there's sufficient gallery space to house one of the nation's most revered African-American art collections.
I described ourselves as a professional couple of modest means with a passion for art and supporting our artists and investing in our culture and heritage. And you can always buy directly from the artist, and you can always pay some down and pay some later, buy it over a period of term.
Over time, Vivian and her late husband John Hewitt would amass one of the country's most widely touted art collections. We sat down with Mrs. Hewitt in her New York apartment.
I must say that John and I had an appreciation for Black American, African-American artists and what they were doing, and great admiration and respect for their talents. And we got to know them very well. They became our friends.
Friends who contributed to the much heralded Harlem Renaissance, and artists from this era of American creativity whose efforts will now be part of the Gantt Center. Works of individuals such as Hale Woodruff and Jacob Lawrence.
What I believe makes the collection unique is just the basic formulation of the collection. The fact that John and Vivian Hewitt assembled this collection over a 50-year marriage for their own personal viewing.
The impressive collection caught the eye of Bank of America President and CEO Hugh McCall, who offered the Afro Center one incredible gift.
It is a great piece of history, and you could sort of follow the evolution of African American art here in the United States. It's a unique collection because of that, because it has so many important artists in it.
I was concerned about the Hewitt collection just on a personal basis because I had been told that they were going to donate this to the center, but I knew that in the building, in the Old Little Rock Church building, there was nowhere to preserve the paintings, not adequate space to really exhibit those pieces the way they should have been.
I was around when that whole thing came about, when Bank of America donated that to the Afro Center. It was so exciting, and meeting Mrs. Hewitt. And of course, at that time, the sad part of that was that there was no place to put the collection. You know, we had all of this beautiful art, and the Afro Center was too small to house all of it.
Before returning to Charlotte, the treasured works consisting of more than 50 pieces toured from city to city.
This collection has traveled from Chapel Hill all the way to San Francisco. You know, it's nationally known, so it immediately makes us nationally known. So it gives us a great opportunity to immediately be on the, not just the local landscape, but nationally.
This is the final resting place for the Hewitt Collection, which is an outstanding collection of artwork that's been collected by she and her husband, which is probably unmatched anywhere in the country. And it's going to be here in Charlotte.
Having the Hewitt Collection is a selling point of pride for Earl Leak, who chairs the center's board of directors.
The Hewitt Collection is a magnificent collection, and for us to have it, and for the Charlotte teens to have an opportunity to see it on an ongoing basis is exciting. And this building is just as exciting, and the important thing is that it is for the Charlotte community.
With the Hewitt Collection as the core collection of the museum's art collection, this begins to put the African American Cultural Center in a league with, say, the DuSable Museum in Chicago, and with the Studio Museum in Harlem.
She's an incredible lady, and the art is incredible, and Bank of America's support of all of that is incredible, and to make all of that happen and be put in this new facility is tremendous.
Bringing the Hewitt Collection to life in its new permanent home allows America's best-known collage artist to return to his Carolina roots. Our city's most celebrated artist, Romare Bearden, was born in 3rd Ward, just blocks away from the building that will now house some of his work.
Romare Bearden was kind of like our godfather when he came, because we loved this man, the fact that he was native to Charlotte, and the fact that he had had struggles in his life, and the fact that he relished the fact that we were going to have an Afro-American Cultural Center right here in his hometown.
He came to the center and he talked to our children, and he told the children stories about these artists, and he told them stories about the pieces that he had painted that were in the exhibit and all of that. And he looked at the educational material, and he just said, this is just so wonderful. He says, I am just blessed knowing that this place exists in my hometown. And of course, I was I was trying to be cool and calm about it, but I still have pictures of him talking to the children.
He certainly was deeply influenced by what he heard and what he smelled and what he saw. And it was basically around that rail yard area over in 3rd Ward. I mean, the railroad trestle and all of the images that he brought. I think that's wonderful. That's going to be in the center.
How proud are we to be able to claim Romare Bearden as a native son, and what a magnificent artist. I get chills every time I think about him. Once I had an opportunity to actually meet him, and my memory of that lunch meeting is his hands, the feeling of it. You could feel the strength, you could feel the passion, you could feel what was coming out of this man that was displayed in his art. And so to have him come home is fitting, and we love Romare Bearden for sure.
Moving from an established institution to a new home is never an easy chore. Beyond the boxes of office equipment and cherished artifacts, it is the unseen emotions and memories that are tough to part with. Such is the case 25 years later by changing locations from the Afro Center to its new Tryon Street home, which begs the question of what happens to the old Little Rock Church.
One of the things I had always hoped, and many of us had always hoped, was that that church would be preserved because of its architecture.
A lot of us worked hard to preserve it, and it needs to remain a part of Charlotte and Charlotte's history.
I am a little tearful when I think about the Afro-American Cultural Center relocating, because I know what a struggle, what a sacrifice people made to make that old Little Rock AME Zion Church into the Afro-American Cultural Center. But I am elated that the center is growing, because that's all we ever wanted anyway.
It's going to be important for whoever steps through those doors next. And also will say to folks that Charlotte is a community that values its past.
That's one of the few buildings that we do have in our center city that was in an African American community. It was owned by African Americans.
What it represents is determination of former slaves who wanted to start and have something for not only for themselves but for their children, and who would dare to build a brick structure in the early 1900s. And I understand that that property cost $20,000, and of course, you know, during that time, I'm sure that was a lot of money for anybody, particularly for African Americans. And then for them to raise their money on their own to build that type of structure.
For Reverend Dwayne Walker, who pastors the present location of Little Rock AME Zion, reclaiming this former house of worship appeared to be a no-brainer. It sits just across the parking lot.
When I first announced the possibility, I mean, there was great applause, and you know, I even saw, you know, persons walk up to me with tears in their eyes.
So that church will give Little Rock AME Zion Church, and I know that they have an interest in using that building to continue their ministry. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's a terrific thing, and I think that, of course, it is a designated historic landmark.
We sell the building and the site to Little Rock AME Zion Church for $590,000.
Political tension surrounded the sale. Putting the church back in the hands of its original owner wasn't the issue dividing Charlotte City Council, but deciding where the proceeds of more than $500,000 would go. Ultimately, the sale was approved, and money was earmarked for the new Gantt Center. But there were other questions regarding the property.
And if you look down there today, there are 2 shotgun houses on the edge of the property. They were added later, moved there, as an example of what folks used to live in Charlotte. They really were, I think, I don't know if they had been mill houses, but they were on the architectural model of the mill house.
They were being demolished as urban renewal was taking place in 3rd Ward. I was able to convince the city and my council colleagues to not tear those houses down, but move them over behind the Afro-American Culture Center.
With the move to Stonewall and South Tryon, these houses will remain intact, and upkeep will be handled by the Gantt Center. Over the last 35 years, Charlotte's Afro-American Cultural Center has rolled out the red carpet to a list of who's who in Black America, and the same kind of welcome is extended to all visitors.
Business leaders and visitors and people attending conferences will come and look at that beautiful building and say, "What's that?" When they're told what it is, they'll still be intrigued. They'll be drawn to it because of the structure. There is symbolism in it. It's not just a center for African Americans. It is now, and it always has been truly, but now it's a center for all of Charlotte, for everyone. It's not just for Black people. It's for Caucasians. It's for Latinos. It's everybody.
Well, it is going to be a nationally celebrated asset that helps define Charlotte both as a destination and as the way we reflect on ourselves. Its proximity to the convention center and to surrounding hotels, and the fact that it's right on South Tryon Street, I think, make it just a wonderful addition to who we are and who we're becoming.
Certainly the location in Uptown Charlotte, our proximity to the other facilities, I think that healthy collaborations will enhance our overall success.
Now more people will come and they will be exposed to the fine new African American Cultural Center named for Harvey B. Gantt. And I think that is something that we dream of. We dream a small dream, and that was the Afro-American Cultural Center. And then we dream a bigger dream, and that was to grow it so that it could encompass more people.
It's going to be a very exciting time, but not just for the Afro-American Culture Center. That whole campus of art is going to be a tremendous showcase for this city.
the Afro-American Cultural Center, of course, has gone through many changes, but I feel now that we are ready and that it's ready and we're prepared to move into this new building with a new sense of vigor and ready to continue to serve its mission.
The evolution of the center is an example of our standing on the shoulders of those who came before us. And hopefully, subsequent generations will be able to stand on our shoulders so that it will constantly be a growing, building process.
Mary Harper, to take this idea that she had about having an African American cultural center in Charlotte to add to the arts, to add to our story, because Bertha was always saying that, you know, there's his story, there's her story, and then there's our story.
It was an opportunity to preserve the culture of the people from the first, second, and third ward communities. And it was connected to our program. And so that was kind of the catalyst for what grew into the African American Culture Center.
From the various locations of more than 3 decades plus, beginning with UNC Charlotte, to Moorhead Street, to Spirit Square, to the Little Rock Church in First Ward, and to this new state-of-the-art location, the mission has been to promote, present, and preserve. And this individual, who the building is named after, is hopeful that it will exemplify much of his life's work.
African Americans knowing more about that history, knowing more about the creative expressions, because now they've got a venue that they can go to and feel comfortable in and get an opportunity to learn more. I can see the center using some of its conference and classroom spaces to bring people of different races together as the city gets to be much more cosmopolitan, that it becomes a meeting house for different racial groups to help build on gaining more racial trust in this community. And doing away with the distrust that's still so evident in so many places.
One final note before the doors officially open here on the Wells Fargo Cultural Campus. A sunset ceremony was held at the old Little Rock AME Zion Church. It came out of respect and loyalty as a means of paying tribute to such a celebrated locale. Drawn to this closing event were the supporters and artists who embraced the concept of a cultural center in the formative years. For more than 70 years as a place of worship and as the Afro Center during the last 25, it has provided our community with a series of meaningful and powerful memories. That building, the brainchild of former slaves, without question, will always offer so many of us with a solid reference point as this new center takes on a fresh identity just blocks away. Lasting traditions will continue here in this place of arts and community education. And for so many who have kept the faith for so long, there is clearly joy in such a cultural journey. From the West Gallery of the Harvey B. Gantt Center of African American Arts and Culture, that's Triumph on Tryon. I'm Steve Crump. Thanks so much for joining us.